In the sterile glow of a hospital night shift, a single email shattered the illusion of family bonds. Uninvited, unseen, but the unseen hand holding their world together. What happens when the invisible pillar decides to crumble? As the clock ticks toward betrayal's reckoning, one woman's quiet fury unleashes a storm that will strip away facades, expose hidden empires, and redefine legacy in the coldest of ways. Hold your breath. The cut is coming. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like distant thunder, casting harsh shadows across the nurses' station. It was 7:14 p.m., the kind of evening where the hospital's rhythm slowed to a tense hush, broken only by the occasional beep of monitors or the shuffle of weary footsteps. My phone vibrated against the cold stainless steel counter, a sharp jolt that pulled me from charting the latest vitals. I expected the usual, a lab update on Mr. Thompson in room 412, or maybe a shift swap from a colleague burning out. But no. The notification glared back at me, an email from my father, Brian. Subject, simply, update regarding summer reunion. I paused, the sanitizer's biting alcohol scent clinging to my palms as I wiped them clean. Curiosity mixed with a faint unease. Family emails were rare, usually laced with obligations disguised as invitations. Tapping the screen, I opened it. The message was curt, almost clinical in its brevity. Morgan, due to limited capacity at the main house this year, we unfortunately cannot accommodate you for the reunion weekend. Please make other arrangements if you plan to be in the area. The words hung there, pixels etching into my mind like a scalpel's precise incision. The hospital's hum dissolved into a muffled roar, white noise swallowing everything. Uninvited? No, this was worse. A dismissal, cold and final, like rejecting a solicitor at the door. The irony twisted in my gut, sharp and unrelenting. This wasn't just any estate. It was the one I'd kept afloat. The roof I'd ensured stayed over their heads. Yet here I was, under these glaring lights, feeling not a wave of sorrow, but a chilling detachment settle over me. Like flipping a switch during a code blue, where panic yields to protocol, emotions locked away as training surges forward. Have you ever been the ghost in your own bloodline? Present in ledgers but erased from lives? The thought flickered, but I pushed it down. No outburst, no shattered screen against the wall, no retreat to the break room's tiled solitude for tears. In my world, chaos was the enemy. When an artery ruptures, you don't interrogate the cause mid-crisis. You clamp it, staunch the bleed, sever if survival demands it. Composure was my armor. I eased onto the vinyl stool, its faint squeak echoing in the dim room, and unlocked my phone once more. Bypassing the email's sting, I navigated to my banking app. My thumb lingered over the scheduled transfers, a hesitant shadow. There it loomed, the monthly $3,500, tagged main mortgage, queued for the first like clockwork for 5 relentless years. $42,000 annually, $210,000 total. Numbers that no longer registered as currency, but as a malignant growth, siphoning my essence. I'd convinced myself it was obligation, a stake in our so-called legacy. Brian had painted it that way, needing a co-signer for that $180,000 renovation loan to mend the aging roof, bolster the deck, rewire the outdated electrics of our ancestral home. His credit? Tarnished by yet another business flop, his third. So I, the reliable one, the nurse with unwavering paychecks and spotless FICO, stepped up. Signed the dotted lines, automated the drains on my account. But staring at that glowing display, the delusion cracked wide open. Sunk cost fallacy, they call it in those economics texts I'd skimmed during night shifts, pouring more into a void simply because you've already lost so much. I'd believed these payments secured my place, bought affection like shares in a faltering stock, a perpetual spot at the family table. But affection isn't transactional. No monthly dues for mere tolerance. My finger tapped the entry. Options bloomed. Edit, skip, cancel series. I chose the last. The app queried, insistent. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? No flutter in my chest, no second guessing. Confirmed. The line evaporated, a phantom severed with digital precision, clean, like cauterizing a vein. I pocketed the phone, drawing in the mingled aromas of disinfectant and overbrewed coffee. A weight lifted, subtle but profound. The rage simmered below, biding its time, but for now, a serene resolution bloomed. Problem identified, excised. They craved my absence? Granted. But sever the lifeline and shadows creep in. I rose, stepping back into the ward's fray, patience awaited, lives to mend. For once, my vigor wouldn't fuel those who'd leached it to buoy their own sinking ships. The reunion dawned like an unwelcome chill, sweeping in without fanfare. I remained ensconced in my high-rise haven, 22 stories aloft, walls of sleek glass and polished chrome enveloping me in earned solitude. No inherited opulence here, no borrowed grandeur, just the fruits of endless trauma shifts. I brewed tea, the mug's warmth seeping into my hands, and succumbed to temptation. Instagram. Rationalized as surveillance, it was truly masochism, probing a fresh wound to gauge the ache. And oh, it throbbed. Jared's story popped first, a video clip. He stood on that vast deck, Atlantic winds tousling his hair, beer in grip. "Family time is the best time," he bellowed, camera sweeping. The deck I'd funded, $45,000 wired straight to contractors when Brian's card failed. Ocean roiled beyond, slate and majestic. Pan to Susan, my mother, mid-laugh, Chardonnay glinting. Brian at the grill, presiding like royalty. Cousins, aunts, uncles, faces from faded memories, likely pitying my demanding job as excuse for my void. It wasn't mere festivity, it was spectacle. But the true blade? My erasure was flawless, no void in the frame, no hushed queries. They flourished, unburdened. Zooming on Susan's photo, caption stinging. Blessed to have this legacy for our children. Children, plural, yet singular in attendance. The cold fury ignited then, not a blaze, but a frost, coiling from core to extremities, steadying my resolve. They toasted on decks I'd fortified, slumbered beneath roofs I'd shielded, reveled in a heritage my grueling hours underwrote. To them, I wasn't kin, I was scaffolding, vital yet concealed, buried in foundations. I shut the app, no reactions, no barbs. Phone met granite with a soft clunk. The apartment's hush transformed, not isolating, but ripe with promise. They'd banished me, but specters linger, especially those denied peace. And I? Primed to haunt with unyielding force. Monday morning arrived not with golden light, but with an insistent vibration that rattled my nightstand at 6:30 a.m. sharp. I was already up, cradling black coffee, gazing down at the awakening city from my glass-walled perch. The skyline glittered coldly, indifferent. I let the phone dance against the wood, once, twice, 3 times. Brian. On the 4th ring, I swiped to answer, pressing it to my ear without a word. "Morgan, what the hell is going on with the bank?" His voice cracked like thin ice, high and frantic, the tone of a man watching his carefully constructed house of cards tremble. No greeting, no pretense. The mortgage transfer bounced. Insufficient authorization. You need to call them right now and fix this glitch. I sipped my coffee, letting the bitter heat ground me. It wasn't a glitch, I said, my words measured, almost gentle against his rising panic. I canceled the transfer. Dead air stretched. 3 agonizing seconds of nothing but his breathing, ragged and disbelieving. Then, "You what?" "I canceled it. I'm not paying the mortgage anymore." "Are you insane?" The shout burst through the speaker, raw and desperate. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We have vendors clearing today, the caterer, the tent rental, all those checks. If that money isn't there to cover the overdraft, we're screwed." The confession landed like a slap. Not just using my funds for upkeep. He'd been laundering the monthly influx into party expenses for an event that explicitly excluded me. My own money floating their champagne and charcuterie. I almost laughed, but it came out dark, humorless. "That sounds like a problem," I replied evenly, "but not my problem." "Morgan, stop being petty." His snap was sharp, paternal authority cracking under strain. "I know you're upset about the invite. It was a logistical thing, okay? Susan felt awful, but we didn't have the bedrooms. Investors were coming, people crucial for Jared's new venture. We had to prioritize. Sometimes you take one for the team." "Take one for the team," I echoed, the words tasting like ash. "I've been funding the team for 5 years, Dad. I bought the gear, built the field, and you benched me." "Don't be dramatic." A scoff, dismissive. "Look, transfer the money now and we can talk this out later. If you don't, you're only hurting yourself. You think you can just walk away? You need us." "I need you?" The voice finally escaped, low and edged. "Dad, look around. Look at that deck, the roof, the wine chilling in your fridge. I don't need you. You're standing inside my charity right now." "You ungrateful little..." I pet him off. "I'm hanging up. Good luck with the vendors." The line went dead. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the electric rush of truth finally spoken aloud. He believed he still held the reins, the patriarch with leverage. He hadn't noticed the game board had flipped. He was no longer the dealer. He was the debt. I didn't wait for the inevitable callback. Instead, I scrolled to Emergency Professional and dialed David, the forensic accountant who'd once unraveled a hospital embezzlement scheme with surgical precision. Expensive, discreet, ruthless with numbers. He picked up on the second ring. "Morgan, you don't call to chat. What's wrong?" "I need you to dig into a property," I said, skipping pleasantries. "The estate in Maine. I co-signed the renovation loan 5 years ago. I want the current financial picture and any irregularities tied to income from that address." "Irregular income?" His voice sharpened, intrigued. "You suspect laundering?" "I suspect they're spending what they don't earn. Find out where it's coming from. 2 hours? 90 minutes, tops." The wait felt eternal. I paced the living room, city blurring beyond the windows, my pulse a steady drum. When the phone rang again, I snatched it up. "You were right to call," David began without preamble. "The property isn't just a residence anymore. It's listed as the Cliffside Estate on a luxury rental platform. High-end vacation stays, $10,000 a week in peak season. Booked solid June through September for the last 18 months. The room tilted. Rental. My investment turned into their private cash machine. But here's the real issue, he continued. The listing isn't in Brian's name. It's under an LLC, Jared Ventures LLC. Your brother is running a 6-figure hospitality side hustle out of the house you're still liable for. How much? My voice came out thin, barely audible. Conservative estimate based on bookings and rates? Over $150,000 in the past year alone. And according to tax pulls and loan statements, none of that revenue touched the mortgage principal. Not a cent declared, not a dime applied to the debt you co-signed. The floor seemed to drop away. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't mere ingratitude. It was systematic theft. Monetizing my credit, pocketing profits, leaving me to shoulder the risk. They lived like royalty on a throne built from my exhaustion. Send me everything, I said, voice hardening. Screenshots, booking calendar, LLC filings, tax records, all of it. Morgan, David warned, tone dropping. If you move on this, it's fraud. Wire fraud, bank fraud. You could put Jared away for years. I stared at the steel horizon, sun glinting off skyscrapers like cold blades. He put himself there. I'm just turning on the lights. I hung up. The hurt that had lingered like low-grade fever vanished. Sadness evaporated. What remained was diagnosis. Deep infection. Systemic. Metastasized. Time for excision. 4 hours later, the city receded in my rear view as I drove north. Suburbs blurred into highways, then into the pine-shadowed coastal roads of Maine. No music, no distractions, just the engine's low growl and the mental rehearsal looping in my head. Every mile sharpened the blade. I reached the estate as the sun bled low, painting bruised purple across the gravel drive. 3 vehicles sat parked, Brian's SUV, Susan's sedan, Jared's flashy convertible he could never afford on his own. I didn't slide into the guest spot. I pulled straight in front of the garage doors, boxing them all. Let them feel trapped. The stone path, relaid 2 summers ago on my dime, crunched under my boots. The oak front door loomed, solid and arrogant. I fished out my key, half expecting they'd change the locks in petty defiance. But arrogance breeds laziness. The tumblers turned smoothly. Click. The door swung inward. Inside, the air hung heavy with stale wine, scented candles, and entitlement. I stepped into the great room. They were sprawled on the custom sectional like royalty at rest. Jared scrolled his phone, chuckling at something. Susan flipped magazine pages idly. Brian poured amber liquid at the wet bar. They froze mid-motion. The silence crashed down, thick and suffocating. Morgan? Susan rose first, clutching her magazine like armor. What are you doing here? I have a key, I said flatly. It's my house. Jared snorted, not bothering to stand. It's not your house. You just co-signed. That doesn't make you owner. And you weren't invited. I crossed to the coffee table and dropped the manila folder. It landed with a sharp crack, like a judge's gavel. Actually, it makes me the primary guarantor. And since the mortgage bounced yesterday because I stopped paying, and since you've violated the loan terms by operating an unregistered commercial enterprise on residential zoned property, I let the words hang, heavy with legal menace. I'm exercising my right to secure the asset. Brian slammed his glass down, liquid sloshing. Commercial enterprise? What the hell are you talking about? I opened the folder. Top page, full color print of the Airbnb listing. The Cliffside Estate, hosted by Jared Ventures LLC, $150,000 in revenue last year. Not 1 cent to the mortgage. Not declared, not shared. Jared's face drained of color. That's just a side thing, helping with expenses. You didn't help, I corrected, eyes locked on his. You profited off my liability. That's fraud, Jared. And Dad, you enabled it. This is a family home, Brian roared, face purpling. You're trying to steal it from us. I'm not stealing, I said calmly. I'm repossessing. The atmosphere shifted. Annoyance curdled into raw fear. They finally saw it. I wasn't here to negotiate, to plead, to forgive. I was here to end the subsidy. You have until sunset, I told them. Pack what you can carry. The silence that followed my ultimatum wasn't peaceful. It was the hollow vacuum right before a structure collapses, air sucked out, pressure building, inevitable. Susan broke first, not with screams or fury, but with the slow, practiced unraveling she'd wielded like a weapon for decades. Her eyes welled instantly, glistening under the great room's recessed lights. Her hands trembled as she reached toward me, stopping inches short when I didn't soften. Morgan, please, she whispered, voice cracking on cue. You can't do this. We're your family. We just had the party. The house is still full of food, the leftovers, the wine. Where are we supposed to go? I met her gaze without blinking. I don't know. Maybe rent an Airbnb. I hear Jared knows the market well. Her face crumpled further, but the tears stayed perfectly contained. No mascara tracks, just strategic vulnerability. Brian stepped between us, shoulders squared, face flushed, the dangerous crimson of barely contained rage. This is cruel, he spat. You're evicting your own parents over a bruised ego, over not being invited to one damn barbecue. I'm evicting you over fraud, I corrected, voice level as a flatline monitor. And it's not spite, it's consequences. Jared crossed his arms, trying for defiance, but the posture looked childish now, small boy caught with his hand in the till. I won't leave, he declared. I have tenants coming next week, corporate retreat. They paid $6,000 up front. I can't just cancel. You already canceled, I said. I contacted the platform an hour ago, provided the deed, the police report number I filed this morning for identity theft on the utility bills in my name. The listing is suspended. Funds are being refunded from your account. His phone buzzed in his pocket like a trapped insect. He yanked it out, stared at the screen. Color bled from his face entirely. The defiance leaked away, leaving him hollow. You reported me to the police? Not yet, I said. That was just to lock ownership and freeze activity. The fraud charges, wire fraud, bank fraud, grand larceny, are pending. Over $150,000. That's federal territory. I pulled my own phone from my pocket and set it on the coffee table, screen up. I dialed Catherine, my attorney, and hit speaker. It rang once. "This is Catherine." Her voice sliced through the room, crisp, professional, ice under pressure. "Catherine, I'm with the current occupants," I said. "They're refusing to vacate voluntarily." "Certainly," she replied without hesitation. "If the occupants do not leave the premises within the hour, we will proceed immediately with criminal filings against Jared Ventures LLC for wire fraud, bank fraud, and grand larceny. Given the amount exceeds $150,000, we're looking at a mandatory minimum of 10 years in federal prison. We will also name Brian and Susan as knowing accessories, since they facilitated and benefited from the unregistered commercial enterprise on a property they did not legally control." The room went deathly still. Only the refrigerator's low hum and the distant crash of waves against the cliffs broke the quiet. 10 years. The number hung like smoke. Susan gasped, hand flying to her mouth. She turned to Jared, eyes wide with something close to horror. "Brian," she pleaded, voice small. My father looked at me then, really looked, searching for the daughter who'd once lit up at his rare approval, the girl who'd do anything for a nod, a good job. He didn't find her. He found someone who held the deed, the evidence, the law. "Pack the car," he said, voice suddenly hollow, deflated. "Dad," Jared started. "Pack the car." Brian's roar cracked the air, veins bulging in his neck. "Do you want to go to prison? Look at her. She'll do it. She'll follow through." It took 43 minutes. I stood by the front door, arms folded, watching the retreat. No assistance offered, no interference given, just witness. They moved like people fleeing a fire, chaotic, graceless. Clothes shoved into black garbage bags, expensive bottles of wine clutched under arms, leftover catering trays balanced precariously. Susan paused once, glancing back at me with wet eyes, but I offered nothing. No comfort, no cruelty. Just silence. When the last bag thudded into the SUV's trunk, Brian turned on the porch. The wind whipped his thinning hair, making him look diminished, older, almost fragile. "You've destroyed this family," he said, voice low and broken. I stepped forward, hand on the heavy oak door. "No," I replied quietly. "I just stopped subsidizing it." I closed the door between us. The deadbolt slid home with a solid, resounding click. It echoed through the suddenly empty house, loudest sound I'd ever heard. It sounded exactly like freedom. The silence afterward was absolute. No voices, no laughter, no clinking glasses, just wood and stone breathing around me. I walked the room slowly. Scuffs on hardwood where they dragged furniture, empty wine bottles in the bin, labels still gleaming. Ghosts of the family I'd tried to purchase for half a decade lingered in every corner. I spent the next 3 days purging, scrubbed floors on my knees until my hands blistered, washed windows until the salt haze vanished and the Atlantic view sharpened like a blade, stripped beds, donated linens in bulk. I was sanitizing an infection, preparing the patient for true recovery. I didn't sell the house. Liquidating would have been clean, profitable, logical. But logic had betrayed me long enough. I called Catherine on Friday morning. "I want to restructure ownership," I told her. "I'm not selling. I'm donating the use of the property." "Donating?" she echoed, surprise softening her tone. "To whom?" "To the healers who are drowning," I said. "I want it to become a respite center, a retreat for crisis nurses, trauma surgeons, first responders, people who spend their lives saving others and have nowhere to turn when they need saving themselves. Free stays, a week of silence, ocean air, no demands. "That's generous," Catherine said, voice warming. "Operating costs? I'll cover them. It costs less than supporting people who hated me anyway." I renamed it. No more Cliffside Estate. It became The Haven. 6 months later, the first guest arrived. An ER nurse from Chicago, eyes shadowed, hands still faintly trembling from too many shifts through the worst of it all. She hadn't slept through the night in 2 years. I met her at the door, not as owner, but as colleague, handed her the key, told her the fridge was stocked, the ocean hers to claim. When the tears came, sudden and unstoppable, I didn't offer cliches. I just stood with her on the deck, let the wind carry them away. Sometimes healing begins when you're finally allowed to break in safety. My family tried reaching out after the local paper ran the story. Nurse donates $1 million coastal retreat to burned-out healthcare heroes. Praise poured in. They probably saw an opening, a way back through the spotlight. Calls, letters, messages. I ignored them all. I'd built a sanctuary. First rule of any true sanctuary: no wolves allowed back inside. If you've ever had to sever a limb to save the body, if you've ever stopped pouring life into those who only took, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're finally healing.